Morning. Hi, welcome to Permission Granted. I'm your host, Juliette Ricci Lagman. Today we have on the podcast Avalon Kalin. He is visiting us for the second time, and we're so grateful he's here. Welcome, Avalon.
Hi, Juliet. Thank you. It's great to be back. Looking forward to this.
Audience, truthfully, this was a little bit of a last minute event, which is great. And so we're gonna do some winging it here and be spontaneous. And we're gonna, as I always like to say, throw spaghetti at the wall. And I'm just really excited. So, Avalon, tell me what is happening.
Yeah, me too, Juliet. I was really looking forward to talking to you because I wanted to ask you questions, and I think it's important to create community like this, like talking like we are. We're both creatives. I look at us as survivors, as
Mhm.
creatives in the 90s and the aughts, and even now. And I honor creatives and artists who are publicly creative because what that does is it embodies creativity and authenticity, or at least some aspect of authenticity of a whole person to the world, to others. And whenever we're doing things, we really are representatives of that thing for each other.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm just happy to talk with you and be around you because I get to, know, relate to you, and like I want to learn more about your journey as you've stepped into this podcast and these conversations, which are really a community, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been I'll just tell you a couple big shifts that have happened over the past, I guess, 6 months. It's flying by really fast. I'm now kind of reaching that point where I gave myself a deadline after quitting my job in September of like, okay, now, at this point you need to start really like going for it, meaning like I guess making money. I hate to say that, but
Mm.
really like having it kind of figured out. And so May was kind of my deadline for that, and I'm fairly on track actually. And I feel like lately I've been trying all these different things, and I've been um I've been doing a little bit scattered, but I'm really finding what brings me joy and what is working. And I am absolutely loving it. It's been amazing. I will say, I had the thought of starting a decluttering business, which is happening. It's active right now, and I've started doing some decluttering, and it's going great. Um, I had the idea, obviously, of doing the
Oh,
podcast.
Juliet, the audio
Yeah.
just clicked out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's back. There we are.
Okay. I had the idea of doing the podcast, which we're doing right now, and it's my passion. I love it. I could do this all day. And then, I talk a lot about obviously the writing and the art piece, and I thought, man, I'm just not going to have any room for creativity. So this is what's so interesting. So you're going to relate to this, Avalon. I took a kind of a little bit of a hiatus from creativity. But the funny thing about creativity is it always finds a way back in because it is everywhere. Maybe you can speak more to this, but now I'm finding that it's naturally creeping back into everything that I do. And I'm not kidding. From A to Z, it could be doing a dump run, it could be obviously I took your suggestion about learning Canva, and I'm loving that. So everything I do, there's a creative entity to it. And I also thought on the podcast, I was kind of leaning towards like, it's going to be more healers and writers. That's kind of what I'm enjoying more. But come to find out, everybody has something to say about creativity because
Mm.
it interacts with their life. So that's been really fun to see how it just naturally comes out, even though I thought I would have to let it go.
Uh-huh. That's right. No, it's still here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Creativity is never going away. Somehow, truth, beauty, and love. I don't know where I first heard that, whether that's an ancient axiom of the goddess or what. But truth, beauty, and love all come together for me. There's a huge spiritual, soulful victory that happens inside of beauty. So
Mm,
the poetry of another person transports you. I think transmutation, or it's like transformation. It's this arc across an experience, and so that's one of the things I love about looking at your work, because I know
mm,
your work. There's these layers to it, and those layers are an experience. So
mm.
depending on the moment you're contemplating the photograph or the writing and the fragments of words in the work that I've seen of yours, as an example, like, it has this effect. And
Mm,
so that's the good news about creativity, is it is everywhere. And I myself have found out that that's like really my theme with creativity, is it's an experience. um, and that is less traditional. Art is typically objects.
hmm.
um, and I've just had a lot of training in art that's not just about making objects, but I have tremendous respect for object making. And in another life, maybe in the past life, I was a craftsman who sat in a workshop all day and crafted things, because I
Yeah.
just, that's kind of heavenly for me to do that. But that's not the gift that I was given as a
Hmm.
focus in this life. I've been tremendously pulled towards that more soulful experience.
Mm,
Whenever I'm around people, I want them to know themselves and to love themselves, like,
yeah.
spontaneously. It's just a part of me. Like, I want to share our authenticity and our encouragement of how we're going to awaken more, how we're going to more be ourselves. And I've always been this way. I can't shake it. But creativity is been a way for me to connect with people like that,
Yeah.
through music. Especially music always has a little scene around it. I just love that, when a scene
Yeah.
is not so much competitive as sharing and expressive.
Yeah.
So that's me riffing on that. Like, there's so much the same thing in your life. I feel like there's an intensity that's just beginning to come out when I see
Oh,
you
wow.
and hear you speak.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the beginning of you beginning to share this power, I feel like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The last episode of the podcast I did with Wendy Poichbeg, I watched it back on YouTube basically, and I was like, wow, I'm a grown up. I'm a full ass grown up. Like I know stuff and I can articulate things and like who'd have thought? Because the person inside of me, the little girl that's been holding myself back and sort of, shoving down things. She wasn't letting me see that, I guess. And I'm starting to go, oh, actually, no, I can do this. I can handle this. And I'll share with you, I had a really interesting experience over the weekend. This is going to be a little woo-woo, but I'm going to share it nonetheless. So my life coach, I just ended my tenure with her, and it was an amazing experience. And she had said to me, "You need to go on a solo trip," which, to be honest, I love traveling by myself. I have no problem being in solitude. I enjoy it. I enjoy my company. Um, but she said, okay, the rules are do a digital detox. So I put my phone away, and I only put my phone away for 12 hours during the day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursday. And I could not even stand it. It was really
Wow.
hard. And and I was so sad at the end of it because, I think I realized how much I was using sort of Instagram to fill in the spaces and not deal with myself. And this is a metaphor for most people
Mm-hmm.
their whole lives.
Mm.
And I cried for like 3 days straight. I mean, I'm being dramatic, but I let out a lot of
Big
stuff.
feelings.
And yeah, and then once I got done with that, um I'm telling you, all these things started happening, like um, abundance, if you will, opportunities.
Mm.
I just can't even articulate it properly, but uh, I guess the reason I'm sharing this is because, that feeling of what I've experienced is that if you're able to sit with yourself and have that luxury, um, even though it's sad and it's lonely and it's really, really hard, you're able to get to a place where you're like, now I can actually be the most authentic version of myself I've ever been. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I just want to breathe that in here.
I know it's really woo-woo, but it
No,
really
not at
works.
all. Yeah, no, that's exactly where I'm at. That is very practical. There's nothing woo-woo about it. Um, and I think a lot of us are facing this. I actually have a quote about that. It's the Hungry Heart quote. Um, so some of you might know Gabor Mate. He wrote In the Realm of the Hungry Ghosts. He was frontline in downtown Vancouver, BC, as a doctor for addicts. And he wrote
Mhm.
this book, and his revolutionary insight is that all addictions come from trauma and attachment harm, deep emotional experiences. Almost all addictions are caused by this. In the past, our generation was told it's genetics, it's brain chemistry,
Mhm.
because that's good for pharmaceuticals. And taking pills, is important, and in the short term, especially, alleviating symptoms can be important.
Mhm.
But really, these deeper needs, the drugs are medicating, like pharmaceuticals. And anyway, he has a new book out called the Myth of Normal, I think it's called,
Mm.
with his son. It's long. It's a good introduction to his work, actually. So I would recommend it to listeners. Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal, and he wrote it with his son. I can't remember his name. Daniel Mate, I think. And in it, he says this great thing, something to the effect of, it's hard to put down something that almost works.
Mm.
It's very difficult to put something down that almost does the job.
That's so perfect. I mean, like, the bag of chips and the almost full bottle of wine, or maybe a
Mm-hmm.
little over half that I drank the first night of I ate the whole bag of chips. I drank almost the whole bottle of wine, which is like, whoa. Sitting there my first night on this, alone escapade, and it did not make me feel
Mm,
good. Let me just
mm.
tell you, it was awful.
I can relate to this 100%. And the thing is, we feel ashamed and guilty, and there's all this tremendous amount of shame for me around this kind of thing in my life. And the point is, our mindfulness will carry us through. It just feels like crap to be in that loop and to try to meet that need. But you said it 100%, that to feel and to be with yourself. I loved how you put it, that it's like there is a new level of authenticity, and it
Hmm.
looks different for each of us. You know, it's such a beautiful experience, and it's easier said than done too, especially to process emotional pain.
Hmm.
Um, but here's the point. So this is the beginning, and I am in the process of this, and I've been through this before. Um, for example, I quit drinking 14 years ago. I quit
Hmm.
smoking 13 years ago. So I know what it's like. And it is a spiritual journey. It's a deeply emotional journey into the self. And um, but let's say, oh, the point is, and there's a book, and I haven't read it. It's Hungry for More. The point,
Oh,
no matter what the substance is, that hunger is your hungry heart
yeah.
for experiences that are your birthright. And there's for those who haven't seen it, you can Google like a list of needs, the list of human needs. You can Google charts for, pie charts and graphs for human emotions and human needs. And the human needs chart, it's got at its core these very powerful human needs that we can all do an inventory consciously, but we feel, don't we? They're like expression, connection,
Mhm.
material needs, obviously meeting your body's needs. But you know that subcategories of movement and sensuality and you know, we need to see and be seen. We need authenticity. We need to be able to
Mhm.
express ourselves.
Can
Um,
I just
yeah.
interject real quick? When you say the book title, Hungry for More, what came to me is we're hungry for ourselves. We're hungry for
Mm.
ourselves, and we keep avoiding ourselves, and I don't have a big
Wow.
family, and yeah, right? And I don't have a big family, and I just keep like, I always think, oh, I wouldn't be able to live without my husband, I wouldn't be able to live without my cats. And one of the realizations that came this weekend was actually not that I would want to, but I am complete on my own and I would be able to live on my own. I'm enough. I don't need to keep, it's like constantly checking Instagram for feedback or distraction. I do the same thing with my loved ones, right? Because it's a natural, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also, um, being able to stand on your own 2 feet for the first time is like, what a crazy experience. And I will also note that that feeling of sitting with the sadness and loneliness, Pima Chodron calls it hot loneliness. Yeah,
Mm.
it sucks. It sucks eggs. I mean, it sucks ass. It just sucks. And and we are taught in our culture, specifically in America, I will say, to avoid that feeling at all costs, at all debt, at all sickness, at all everything.
Julie, this is such a awesome. I love what you said. I'm hungry for myself. Thank you. I want to keep riffing on this. So,
Okay.
um, we are getting so much from each other, from community. So let's just honor that too, really quick before we keep going with this.
Yeah.
And the information seeking can also be part of our obsession. I want more information, um, or you know, the hungry heart, which is good. We all are here to have hungry hearts, but meeting our need for authenticity and connection in ourselves. So we can actually, in this podcast community, there's this name for it, Sangha in spirituality, and satsang is the community of truth, sat truth.
Mm.
Um, and what's that? What's the best guru? The true teacher points us to the wisdom in our own hearts.
Mm.
And we have this thing about like gurus are mostly charlatans or whatever. And it's like, no, guru means teacher. It means darkness to light, guru, from darkness to
Ooh.
light. And a good teacher is relieving us of the darkness, shining the light into parts of ourselves. But
Mhm.
it totally sucks. It is so painful because they're
It's
pointing
the
us
worst.
to these experiences that we have to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am so there right now. And that's one of the things my intuition was, oh, bring up emotional pain. And we can talk about that when we talk about
Yes.
we had a short list, everyone, about things we could talk about. And I'm
One of
so
them
glad.
is one of them is Men's House, so we'll kind
Yeah.
of get to
Yeah.
that.
We
Yeah,
can
yeah,
get
yeah.
to men's, and I'm starting a men's circle with a good friend of mine, Nick. And we had our first circle in person here outside of Spokane in this country setting.
Oh,
And in
oh,
this
do
year,
tell.
it was great. Yeah. But before we get there, I just wanted to say one of the reasons we're attracted to people, to community, to others is we co regulate.
Hmm.
And that's what me and you were doing when we said hi and we settled in and we made sure we were all good. And we just kind of touch these things to make sure we're not in the middle of a crisis or emergency. We're settling in. We know it's the podcast. How's life been? It's been okay. We just touch these bases. When
Yeah.
you're around people, they might put their hand on yours. I know I have two daughters, and they'll say, "Dad, carry me upstairs." And what it does
Oh,
is it gets that skin to skin contact. They'll jump on the back, and it's just another person to help them know it's okay if they've been through a
yeah.
big day at school. Or we all do this. So there's this natural need for connection
Comfort.
and
Hmm.
comfort, and we love each other for that, and we need each other for that. But for a lot of us, something's going on inside,
Mm.
and our hungry hearts are overdoing it, with the doom scrolling, the food, whatever
Yes.
it is, shopping. Everyone's got different things that they can overdo. Working too much, not living enough. Um,
Hmm.
each of us has these different things, and so thank you. I'm so glad. It's literally like this last 2 3 weeks have been so obviously about this journey.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yeah.
and if you the beautiful thing about fear, like, can we talk about fear before we move on?
100%.
Um, so emotions happen. Let's talk about fear. There's this great quote. I compile Richard Rudd. He wrote the Gene Keys, and Gene Keys come from Human Design. So if you're interested in Gene Keys, you haven't heard of it before, check out Richard Rudd. He has this vast book, and they're contemplations on I Ching archetypes. So they're
Hmm.
really awesome. And he does a thing where he makes sure to talk about the shadow of every gift. Every gift has its unconscious expression or obstacle, but by knowing the shadow of a gift, the gift begins to come out through that knowing. So
Mm.
this is the good news for the seeker, that wherever you are, you that is your spiritual journey. What's inside,
Hmm.
what's in front of you, what you're facing. It gives new meaning to suffering and misery, actually. It lights
Mm.
it up with a spiritual meaning. And that's the good news for the seeker. You're on the path.
Ah.
Um, so here's some Richard Rudd from Gene Key 25, which is about acceptance and universal love. I don't know if you have this in yours, but it came up around fear. Constriction is the shadow of acceptance. And I want to talk about this because I think we can all relate to this at some level, especially right now. Um, to be alive in the human body can be a great constriction, especially when living in a reality based on fear. Fear creates its own biofeedback loop. This is the constriction vortex. Love grows through freedom and dies through constriction. The shadow of constriction is a wound beyond understanding. It acts like an endless chasm, choking the life out of you, but ultimately is just an illusion. Life without boundaries or constrictions of any kind heals this wound. And I would just put a parenthesis. That's what life is. It's ultimately boundless,
Mm.
the life force energy. As you journey into the sacred wound, or this sacred wound, of constriction, it's like unwinding the karmic knots and cords that come with our lives and
Mhm.
relationships. This shadow, when repressed, appears as ignorance of our own pain. And I see this a
Mm.
lot in people. And when it's reactive, when we have a reactive shadow to constriction, it appears as coldness,
Mm.
because we hate how we feel.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost done here. The only way out of this constriction loop is to simply feel how it feels to have our fear.
Oh.
As we reduce fear to its essential sensation in the body and in the body's chemicals, we have the key out of constriction. Isn't that
Oh my gosh.
beautiful? You no
It's
longer
so
need to
beautiful.
be afraid of fear. Yeah, I love Richard Rudd.
I will just say there in the past few months, or specifically maybe the last 3 months, so many times that I wanted to give up and I would go back and forth and be like, ugh, I should just go get a job, and I wanted to give up on this path because it's hard. It is
Mm,
really hard, but I've never experienced something so rewarding, over these past few months. So yeah, I think, going, as they say, through it, sitting with the fear and the shadow and the sadness, that's where you get to the really good stuff.
mhm. Yeah, and I know there's that skeptic or the devil's advocate saying, well, there is good fear, there is healthy fear.
Yeah.
We are afraid to go walk towards the edge of a cliff because it's dangerous. And so, what we're talking about is this fear that loops and constricts us from being able to accept ourselves fully,
Oh my gosh,
accept
I just got
this moment.
chills.
So there are some good fears. You do have to pay bills eventually, and um, whatever it
Eventually.
is in in your business, however the business model is working, and the but these fears, and this goes back to meeting the needs, which is, that's the beautiful thing too, is the sacred aspect of this archetype 25 of acceptance is universal love, which is so beautiful. Remembering that there is room enough in our hearts for everything.
Mm.
It's just however you can tap that through a community of truth, through meditation, through prayer, through nature, walks in nature, through experience of unity, which is the name
Mm.
for yoga. You can see my
Oh, wow.
bias there, pointing people towards yoga.
As you
I am a
should.
little aspiring yogi, and yeah, your experience of unity will remind you, will give you that taste. And I know people who walk around with this in their heart, and being around yogis, even if they don't practice yoga, is so powerful because they're walking throughout their day carrying this light of connection within them. And so being a human being is forgetting and remembering and forgetting and remembering. And it doesn't
So
have to be about
touching.
shame anymore. It can be just very practical to see my fear constricts me. What's happening in my body? Am I overthinking it? And
Mhm.
I've done your astrology, so um, trying to figure it out can be a
Hot
thing
mess.
too. Yeah, trying to figure it out can be a problem, right? Because the answer ultimately isn't up there. There's a lot of resources there,
Yeah.
but the answer is in the heart and the mind working together.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
will
yeah,
interject
please.
a couple things. One is that I have learned obviously, and you hear this over and over, those racing thoughts are there to keep us safe, and sometimes you
Mm,
just have to talk to those thoughts and be like, hey, thanks, but I'm good. What's the worst that can happen? All of that. So yes, getting in touch with your soul and your intuition. I can't tell you how many times I've had the experience of like, oh, no, don't call that person yet. It's not ready. And then something happens that it's good that I waited, or okay, now call them. And in fact, I called this gal the other day, and she's like, I'm about to get on a plane to Mexico in 2 hours, and it was crucial that I talked to her. And I had waited, and then I was like, okay, don't wait anymore. My intuition told me, and so it was perfect, perfect timing. Um, but I also want to
beautiful.
interject. I know, right? Ron, my husband, and I know I've talked about this in previous episodes. He, on the men's health tip, he had prostate cancer, and throughout his before surgery and after surgery, and still to this day, he goes to yoga 3, 4 times a week, and he's now in his 300 yoga teacher training, 300 hour, in the midst of that. Anyway, the doctors told him his recovery was so good after his surgery because of the yoga, and
Mm.
it's maintained that. And then his doctor literally started doing yoga because of him, which I think is
Beautiful.
really telling. And Ron didn't even like yoga until 2 years ago. I'd introduced him to it. Yeah.
I love it. And the yoga is connecting us with our truest selves, in more or less
Yeah.
integrated. It's integrating our energy, our body, and our spirit, our heart, Um, and the mind's thoughts are part of that. Naturally, the mind doesn't really need to think much. Actually, it just thinks when it needs to. Um,
Put
but
shirt
any,
on.
yeah, there's things that come through, and the mind's really good at strategizing and other things. But that, um, for example, the pressures that are put upon us like in the case of a thinker, an overthinker, the pressure to have
Mhm.
an idea for something all the time. That's the pressure to think. That's the crown. And the root is the pressure to move. And it's a very tribal connection that, so we want to be in balance. Is that the natural and appropriate amount of pressure that I'm feeling? And because
Mm.
we are alive, we do want to feel some pressure. It keeps us in our meridian. It keeps us alive and thriving. So when we do yoga, or something that's going to allow us to integrate it, yoga is the only one that I know. Um, we don't have to be that person who's responding and reacting to the pressure of the tribe to
Oh,
move,
wow.
constantly move, or we don't have to react to the pressure of being a human being in this life where we have to have it all now figured out
Hmm.
in our mind's eye, or whatever else pressures that we have in our bodies. A good yoga practice is going to allow the flow, the natural flow, and allow the stresses to come out or energy to move in where it needs to go. So that's
Yeah.
my quick PSA for that. But I wanted to get back to community and talk about that men's circle before I forget. We were
Yes,
talking about
please.
Ron's health. Um, so there's so much going on with the generations. I'm Gen X, and so baby boomers are our parents' generation, and the next generation down is like millennials, which includes like
Hmm.
Z and like I'm not sure the other ones exactly. Um, and
There's X and everybody else. Just kidding.
yeah, right. And we're kind of the foot soldiers for the baby boomers. We inherited a lot of their values, and we experienced life without social media and the internet
Yep.
and cell phones. But for men of my generation, we have this imbalance that we inherited of not having a powerful and healthy masculine.
Mm.
We have an unhealthy masculine, which was dominating. It was using masculine traits of power to force people to do things they don't want to do.
Oh my gosh.
It's an oppressive society that we live in. It's very forceful. Everyone has to work to survive. It's
Hmm.
not an abundance based society. And then also we have unhealthy feminine traits.
Hmm.
Men, I'm talking about men. Instead of having a healthy feminine, which is to receive abundance,
Oh yeah.
we take and we leak our energy out with. So because we're out of balance, we have these negative masculine and negative feminine traits. And when we were able to balance them in ourselves, these principles of giving and receiving, the principles of boundary making and life
Hmm.
supporting. So boundaries and life go together. A lot of people in our adolescent self, we think it's total freedom, and it's
Yeah.
not. All freedom exists within containers and boundaries, just like cells in life.
Yeah.
Cells, life requires boundaries, but the boundaries have their laws and their rules about what comes in and what doesn't. So it's a dynamic, actually very feminine. Boundaries have a feminine aspect as well. So there's always
Yeah.
room for both to occur. So I'm just saying this to say men have a lot that they can do in themselves to learn about themselves. Um, but why? Why would they even do that? And I would say because men are in crisis. Okay, everyone looks like is in crisis right now, but men specifically do not have a place in our society as they once did. And in our generation, Generation X, we have seen the transition complete. And women have now entered what traditionally were masculine roles, men's roles. And
Yeah.
men are trying more or less, and I don't think very much able to, because I don't think we can always take all the roles. But for example, men becoming nurses would be one example. Men are entering fields where women are, but men are isolated. Like my sum up of men's health is like, first of all, most people stop touching men at the age of 8. So men don't get
Okay.
any contact, and
Can I
yes.
can I just yes, this I want to just highlight this is really important conversation and I'm so glad that we're having it. So I mentioned to my friend, I talked to my friend Josie earlier and about what we were going to talk about, that you and I were going to do a podcast and she said, "Oh my gosh, that is so needed to talk about the men's health piece, their emotional health because it
Mm.
affects women, it affects everybody." So, yes, the men feeling isolated and not having friends. Yes, let's talk
Oh
about
yeah,
this. So,
so men
sorry.
are totally isolated. They're suicidal. Young men in particular do not have communities or ways to meet. They are not being men. They are not using their yang. They're not uh, offering and being life supporting boundary keepers, which is what men are here to do. The
Mhm.
masculine thing is to be of service to life, to ask women what is needed and to do it really well.
Oh my God. Can
That's our
we
job.
just make a poster that says
Yeah,
that? I'm just
I
kidding.
know. I saw this little video that was like men are like dogs, and it's like, yeah, they are like dogs. They're loyal. They're happy to see you. They want to bring you stuff.
I love it.
They want to hang out.
Unconditional love.
Yeah, they want to just cuddle. So the crisis of men is that we have been abandoned by patriarchal society to a meaningless, purposeless, amoral economy. This economy is amoral, and it forces men. If you want to make money, it's basically putting your hand in somebody else's pocket. And
Yes.
it's so hard to even be a man who can make his own life, but it's possible. But institutionally, it's not really supported. We'll say people tax the heck out of you, and and it's the big boys who always win in town. They're the ones who already got money. Capitalism is really amoral system, and
It's based on like how how and who do I have to trick today to make money for me? Because
right,
there's only this much money. There's not enough
yeah,
to go around.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So this system, which has just isolated everybody into consumerism, and there's a few books to recommend. For male psychology, there's a book, I Don't Want to Talk About It, by Terry Real. I'll recommend to
Mm,
listeners. Terry Real wrote this book about the male psychology, mostly boomers, but it says a lot to the rest of us. Um, and what makes men the way that they are. Instead of demonizing, let's look at men. Instead of pathologizing masculinity and men as the problem, let's look at what happened to them. I'm here to tell you, men deserve everything that everyone deserves. There are no bad people. There is no bad guy. All human beings are worthy of respect. They all have stories. And if you learn someone's story, they are no longer evil to you. Okay?
yes.
So if you think men are the problem, I want to ask you this. When did a boy become a man? When did someone worthy of your love and respect become somebody who's not? And I don't know about you, it's for each of us to hold our hearts. But whenever I exile another person, I'm exiling a
Mm,
part of myself. I'm doing
mm,
injustice to myself.
yeah.
So, um, for me to stand up for men is part of the journey, to say men are worthy of love. Don't
Yeah.
write us off. And men and women are meant to work together in partnership
Hmm.
and in abundance and in actualization. Let's go very far into what humanity is here for. Men and women are here for actualization, to work together.
Yeah.
That should be our government. That should be our economy,
Hmm.
and it could be. But back to like men's health. Oh yeah, and the will to change. Bell Hooks. She's one of the great writers
Mm,
of our time, of American
yeah.
social writers, and she's amazing, heart centered, intellectual. Um, Bell Hooks wrote a book about men called The Will to Change, and I really
Mm,
recommend it if you haven't read it for women and men out there who want to bring men back,
hmm.
and connect with men. Um, it's going to be a long journey for us, but and then obviously the body keeps the score, to learn about trauma and
That's a good
attachment
book.
harm. Yeah, and then um, so that's kind of the motivation. Men are isolated. I myself, I'm just like, dudes aren't calling me. Like my
Yeah.
friends do not reach out,
Yeah.
and so like I was saying, at the age of 8, people stop touching us. They stop hugging us, and
Oh,
we wonder why men are so oversexed. It's like um, they're not connected. They're not
yeah.
sensual. Um, no one's calling them to say, "How are you doing?" You can do it. No one's relating to them. As
Yeah.
a man, the hard reality as a man is you are here to produce,
Hmm.
maybe appear, uh, to look good, but mostly just to produce. That's your value here, and that's really sound. It
It
reduces
is.
it reduces a person to their ability to make money.
Hmm.
And if
Hmm.
you don't want to live in a world where we objectify people, where people aren't objectified and just used, look at how we look at men and their value in this world.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so being a man, men, I want to give opportunities for men to connect. And the beautiful thing about, so we just started a men's circle. It's called Mindfulness Men's Collective. I'm
Mm.
here in Spokane. It's not online. It's just in person right now. We meet once a month at this beautiful large yurt out in the country outside of Spokane.
Wow.
And Nick and I, Nick's a good friend of mine, and he calls it the Sacred Rebel Fellowship.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of like, hey, oh, this is a beautiful thing about men too. It's like, um, to be a man for me is to know that life is sacred, and someone who protects that. And
Yeah.
I read Iron John. I don't know if it was in there, but that is what is supposed to happen when a younger generation is initiated into adulthood. They are supposed to be
Mm.
around other men who say, we need you.
Yeah.
You are welcome to be among us on these prerequisites if you can do these things. Not everybody gets in. You have to agree to this, but
Yep.
you can come and join us as people who do this job. And what we show you is a truth. And it's the
Yeah.
truth that a man, an adult knows, not necessarily men, but all adults know, is that this life is sacred and you have these jobs you do to protect it, to support it.
That that reminds me of, and maybe you're the one who told me this. I think you possibly, I can't remember. In other cultures, the parents aren't, we're not supposed to be all individual and self-sufficient and know everything. So if your kid comes out of the womb and they have a natural characteristic of being a healer or being a craftsman or whatever it is, the tribe would get together and connect that child with the elders that do those things and know about those things so they could be ushered in and taught. And I think we're definitely missing some of that. Like, the parents are supposed to know it all and teach it all and do it all, and then also relying on I guess the school system, and or find your own mentor. A lot of folks don't have the opportunity as a young person to find your own mentor or know that's even a thing, and maybe it's not. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but it just
No,
reminded
that
me.
level of, yeah, social integration, we've had it before as a species, and it's how we got this far. And without it, we're falling apart.
Hmm.
Um, the drive to win by material accumulation and
Yeah.
appearing and romance, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is all an adolescent, and even heroics actually are psychologically adolescent visions for life. So we're
Yeah.
living in a culture which glorifies a level of maturity that's really just for like the 20s, achieving a
Mm.
mate, looking good. These are all the beginnings of adulthood. They're not maturity. So we're living in a
Yeah.
psychologically immature society.
Hmm.
And the winners of our society are sociopathic in that way. They've achieved these things that are not, full or heart,
I
really,
just
truly
can't
heart.
help but think of all every time you say something like that, I think of what's politically going on, and I'm just like, yep.
I know
It just,
exactly.
my mind is exploding right now.
I know exactly. So we're seeing, but here's the clincher, and this goes for all of us and for the listeners. I would challenge you to realize that you are um, giving your power away and your inner authority away, and this is all of this coming back to you, coming back to us. When we
Yeah.
send our kids to school where they're really being divorced of their own inner authority and really being taught to obey more than anything, to
Yeah.
give their time and space to others without their consent, like having to go into rooms, line up, and do all these different things, to really learn and to
Um,
act when somebody else tells them to is so disempowering, and we've internalized it as if it's normal. It's only 100 years, this experiment, and it's highly disempowering, and it's a factory model. And I'm really opinionated about this because I
mhm.
think the failure of all of our industries comes down to us giving our authority away. Somehow along the line, we were told somebody knows better than you when it comes to you. And I know we're
Wow.
not all supposed to have our opinions about everything. We're not all experts, but to say I'm going to do what this person says, not necessarily understand what they're saying or trust them, but because I have to,
Hmm.
this is very dangerous. And so I don't
Yes.
want to get into too many details about medical freedom or anything like that, but
But we're being taught to not think for ourselves, essentially. And, we're being encouraged to not get to know ourselves and find our power and be empowered. Um, and I want to also go back to touch on just the mental health and emotional piece, just thinking about, um, how do I say this? Men as they become adults and showing affection or to their children, showing emotion, crying, any of those things. It is just such a rarity. And it seems like it's, again, one of those things we try to avoid at all costs. But when I see that, when I see that in men, sometimes I'm shocked and taken aback because it's so unexpected. And I'm also like, oh, that's a real man. Like it just
mm,
blows my mind.
yeah, the true alpha is a man who's self-regulated and self-aware
Mm. Oh, wow.
because everything moves around him. He's there to help everybody, so everything's moving around him. But this is actually a full circle. It ties the men's health to what we've been talking about so far, and I wanted to ask you about this. And this is such an awesome conversation, Julie. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, the connection between well, it's a community, men's health, self awareness. Let's talk about a little bit about authenticity, the
Okay.
power of authenticity. In this conversation, it's very powerful.
Hmm.
And I would say that any work we do here in ourselves will improve the collective. We will model it
Yes.
for others. We will make better decisions. We won't fall for the bullshit and the
Yeah.
pseudo arguments. We'll get to the core of it. Like, oh, is
That's what
this?
we do the work for.
Yeah, yeah. So authenticity. Um, Let me just throw some stuff out. Like for me, a big one, um, and this is kind of trying to bridge the gap between men and women, is that we're all doing work in ourselves, and so we can all be allies to each other.
Hmm.
Um, but I would posit this: yes, it's empowering to feel your feelings, and yes, it's empowering to express yourself. But that is not the end of the journey, because people who've been repressed and suppressed for so long, when they express themselves, they think, God, it's finally happened. But now that it's out there, that's just part of the journey. So I would say, feel your feelings and then you're responsible for them. So for me,
Hmm.
authenticity isn't just knowing yourself, it's being responsible and honest with yourself. Now, honesty is not easy. We're self-deceiving creatures. So we often need each other. We need help to be
Hmm.
honest with ourselves. For me, I need to know that that it's safe to be honest. So
Yeah.
I need to be exposed to other people's honesty. Like, oh, they survived that level of honesty. That's just me. And I see this again and again. So the next step is on the journey of emotions and knowing yourself and taking responsibility for yourself is to what's it? I see it here. Access the wisdom inside of the emotion.
Oh, wow.
That emotion is telling you something. It's
Hmm.
telling you something about the situation. It's telling you something about yourself. When it comes to powerful emotions, it's so simple, but it's so profound. And
Hmm.
like we were talking about earlier about not wanting to experience emotional pain.
Yeah.
So if there's a crab ton of grief waiting for me after losing a loved one or
Mm.
a job or a role, a marriage, um, first of all, I don't want to go through the grief. And then, by going through the grief, um, maybe there's anger.
Hmm. Yeah.
So maybe I'm angry at somebody or something. So then I can say, what's this anger? What am I trying to defend?
Hmm.
Then it goes deeper. So this is a journey you could take with a shaman, with a therapist, but it's going to be it's going to be a fragile, sometimes it might hit you over the head, but it's going to be a precious, we'll call it a
Yeah.
precious wisdom. And then that's not even all, because we're so self-deceiving. What are the blocks to me experiencing the wisdom?
Oh, wow. Talk about blocks. I worked with my life coach on the emotion code. There's that book called The Emotion Code, and releasing, to improve your
Mm.
health, or releasing emotional blocks in the body,
Mm.
and
Write that
generational
down.
trauma. Yeah, it's called The Emotion Code.
Thank you.
Um, and it's pretty incredible. The generational trauma thing, I kind of over the years was like, man, I don't know if that's true. No, it's a real thing. That
Mm.
scarcity thing, um, tied to money, or it could be, there's lots of different abuse,
Mm.
etc. All of those are real things, and it's something that everybody should look at.
Beautiful. Yeah. And like Caroline Miss, or Miss,
I
she
think it's
writes a
Miss.
Miss Caroline Miss. Yeah, she writes about connecting of the spirituality to the chakras, and she
Yeah.
was it was kind of controversial because she attached illness to that, and obviously people take that as another chance to feel shame and blame.
Mhm.
But it's not that. It's not like about that at all. It's trying to make
Yeah.
sense of, yeah. And the thank you for mentioning the intergenerational component, because I forget about that it
Hmm.
could have been generations and generations ago that this was
Yeah.
put into the DNA of the family, in the genetics, or what are they called, um, anagenetics, I can't remember the name for it. It's how the genes are expressed between the generations is unlocked by the particular parents and children. And this is great stuff. So the good news is, um, by being present for the
Hmm.
feeling, you can experience it for what it really is. And that is really hard,
Yes.
but it's in this moment. So the recipe for moving through is there for you. If you haven't, or you're going through this now, or you're remembering, because you forgot, the journey through is to be present and to feel the sensations that are happening.
Yes.
And we each have different parts of this path, that we're on.
And it's, to layer on top of that, just remembering, um, I well, I'll tell a quick story. Sunday I had something I had to do, and I was really, really, really anxious and nervous about it. And I just kept telling myself, um, throughout that couple hours before, I said, you're not going to feel this way in a few hours. You're going to feel amazing. So even though you feel like you want to die right now, and you think you're going to die, that, like, just breathe through it. So I
Mm.
literally took deep breaths, and then sometimes you're just moving along. Like on the way home, I was like, I did it, and I was on a high, and I felt great, and the sun was out, and I'm like, life is perfect. So, everything is temporary. And you know they say, there's a quote, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So if you can just stay as close to neutral as possible, I mean, obviously feel your feelings. That's great.
Mm.
But don't let it take you down. Don't go down a dark path, if you will, and stay there. you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
you just everything is temporary, everything's impermanent, and
And
neutral.
once, and yeah, once neutral, and once you bring this level of awareness, which is mindfulness, which is includes this neutral component, mindfulness is quickly defined as non-judgmental, present moment awareness.
Mm,
And it's a fancy way of saying this particular type of awareness that comes in without attachment. It
yeah,
witnesses silently. I would call it grace, but it doesn't have to be that per se. But it is the presence of awareness enough that's not attached with judgment, enough to keep that door open so that any loop can break into a spiral and expand or dissipate.
yeah.
And you are supposed to think about death. You are supposed to think
Mhm.
about dying. I did your
every day.
astrology, right? That's funny. I did your astrology. It's there that it's a part of your path.
Yeah.
Mine is struggle is there, and I just had this breakthrough. So I think it's with honoring, and it really ties here. My breakthrough with
Ooh,
struggle and perseverance is honoring,
I want to hear
and that's
about
in my
that since we're
astrology. Yes,
there.
thank
What's
you.
your breakthrough?
My
Yes.
yeah, my breakthrough. I used to think honor was sitting having status or a sword and a shield. Some honor was a willpower,
Hmm.
some kind of thing like that, a strength, and it is. But what I discovered this week, it's had this epiphany in relationship to struggle, to suffering through things, obstacles. This got in my way. This is so hard. When does struggle become perseverance, and when does perseverance become honor?
Mm,
And the difference is the level of awareness and meaning we are in myself, or we are in ourselves. If I am, and this goes back to inner authority, authenticity, and I would even say astrology, knowing your gifts, because then you can know when you're living in your purpose. But it's a feeling. You don't have to read about it. You
yeah.
know it. It's in
You
your
know
body.
it. You
Yeah.
feel it.
It's a gift you were born with, whether astrology tells you about it or not. And
Yeah.
but the point is that honoring is actually it is a meaning giver, and it is so honor is to know that when you are in your purpose, when you are aligned with your, I don't know about the word higher self, I even like deeper self, well, it's just whatever it is,
Mhm.
it's the self, that is going to not only allow you to persevere, it's going to let everything that's happening in your life be elevated to the place of
Mm.
purpose.
Yeah.
So instead of all these problems that I'm suffering, now I'm experiencing things as they are. Oh, and I would say I am experiencing a new way to love myself.
Mm. Yeah. I would say that what I've experienced is well, the best thing I can relate to this is even through um, quote unquote wrong paths or failures that I've experienced recently, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm just learning so much. So I just keep trying to not beat myself up like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but more like, okay, now I know better for next time,
Yes.
and it pushes me on the right path, basically. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And there will be contraction and expansion, and just any chance you can get to touch the spaciousness of yourself, meditation, bhakti, movement, exercise, art, dance.
Breath
This is going
work.
to breath work. This is going to, yes, it's going to bring you back to your natural spaciousness, which has room for all the fuck ups, which has rooms for
Hmm.
all the experiments, which has rooms for all the other people's ideas that you don't even have to
Yes.
consider. It's got room for all of it. Um, Obviously, you have boundaries, and you can say what comes in and what doesn't. But even the stuff that comes in, and you're like, what is this teaching me?
Yes, there
Um,
you go. That's a good point. What is this here to teach me?
yeah.
Um, and, you know, we could go on about, good and bad and why did this happen? Bad things happen to good people. Like, no, set that all aside. Being present is really, it's how you deal with it and move forward and stay present. Um, so we talked about a little bit about the men's circle and men's health. Before we kind of wrap up on this portion, we're gonna pause and then do a bonus section. Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
Thank you so much, Julie. This has been awesome. I have to remember to call you Juliette.
Yeah, it's okay. So audience, like just a fun. Um, my real name is Juliette. It was my French great grandmother's name, and my family calls me Julie, but they're the only ones. And Avalon, you're part of the family.
Hey, thank you.
But
Wow.
when I turned 16, I embraced my full name, and it was a good move because it felt right. But yeah, Julie. Every time I hear it, I'm like, oh. Is that my brother or my mom?
Juliet, I could get into the practice. This is
It's
good.
all good.
Thank you. It's been such a full conversation. And yeah, I'll just mention at the end for creatives specifically, we've talked so much about self development,
Yes.
self awareness, archetypes, fear, men. But for creatives, we're going to do a bonus where we talk about the 7 principles of creativity, which come from the Hermetic principles. Like, and so connecting to source, embracing movement, new ways to embrace movement in yourself,
Mm,
and um, things like correspondence, which for the artist is really transposition. So we're just going to talk about those and little exercises for connecting with these core principles of creativity for the creatives out there, or artists, or anyone. We're gonna talk about
anyone.
that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Avalon. I'm going to wrap up here. And for all of you who are interested, please do subscribe and you'll receive some great bonus episodes of the podcast. So thank you.